Hey, what's up, YouTube fans? I've made a lot of videos recently, right, talking about the nested hierarchical patterns of life, right, groups like mammal, tetrapod, vertebrate, right, and I've talked about how bats are a good example, right, for showing how the entire difference between mammal versus bird, right, is not practically necessary, right? Because a bat flies like a bird, right? And yet it is a mammal, right? And so its body is vastly more like that of a camel, an elephant, a seal, a mouse, a horse, etc., right? Than it is like that of a bird, right? A bird could just as well have mammalian anatomy, right? Or vice versa, a bat could just as well have bird anatomy, right? So in any event, what I wanted to talk about in this video, further going off of that, right, is that any conceivable practical reason that you could come up with for having the differences between bat versus bird, right, must in of itself also explain the differences between one group of birds to another, right? Because there are thousands of species of birds organized into hundreds of families, right? There are hundreds of families of them, right? And we see much more novelty between these groups than we see within them, right? And the novelty within these groups is extremely restricted by the fact that they are a part of the group to begin with, right? The amount of diversity from one bird group to the next is extremely restricted by the fact that they are birds to begin with, right? And so, someone who I was pointing out to online, all of the many mammal characteristics and how a bat has all of these, right, whereas a bird doesn't, what they tried to say is that it was because that bats are nocturnal, whereas birds are diurnal. So for diurnal meaning going out in the day, and nocturnal meaning going out in the night. So a few things: not all bats are nocturnal, and not all birds are diurnal. So that's for starters. And for another thing, there's really no practical reason for why either should have to be nocturnal or diurnal, right? There's no reason for why there should have to be that some flying animals are nocturnal and some are diurnal, right? And like I said, right, any explanation that you come up with has to explain not just the difference between bat versus bird, but also bird versus bird, right? One group of birds to another, right? If the whole point was that birds are flying animals that are diurnal, right, you wouldn't need so many groups for that to be the case, right? We have single species of birds that are found spread across most of the continents of the world, and a single species. All the more so with families of birds, right? Most families of birds, right, coexist with other families of birds that exist within the same environment, right? And so if the whole point, right, was that, and also this, what else, right, because organisms reproduce, right, a single species of birds could be much more numerous, right, than most other species combined, right? We see in the animal kingdom, including with birds, that there are many examples of extremely populated species that the number of individual organisms within the species far outnumbers a great number of other groups combined, right? A great number of other species combined the number of organisms they have, right? And so in order to have a large amount of birds, right, existing individual organism birds, you wouldn't need as many different distinct families of them, right? Let alone species, right? And so any reason that you give, right, for the difference between mammal versus bird, right, it also is going to have to account for the difference between bird versus bird, right? If the point was to have flying creatures that are diurnal and some that are nocturnal, you wouldn't need as many groups for that, right? And all of the diversity of birds, right, is highly restricted by the fact that they are birds, right? All of the many differences, mammal versus bird, right, is very narrowly restricted, right? You could get much more diversity if they were not restricted within either being a bird or a mammal, right? And so, all right, that's all for now. See you guys.